everyone, welcome back to another video on my channel. In today's video, we're going to be talking about, is quitting cold turkey right for you? So this is sort of like a follow-up to my previous video about moderation. And this is going to be like just some ideas on what you can do if you have a video game addiction. And that's the goal of the video. So if you don't have a video game addiction, then it's really up to you what you want to do, because I mean, some people have gaming as a hobby and that's perfectly fine. I'm just here to help those who are struggling with a video game addiction like I was in the past. And I'm going to talk about my anecdotal evidence, which is obviously anecdotal, but I'm also going to try to discuss what has worked for other people. And I'm not too familiar with the research, but I am somewhat familiar with the concepts that are discussed in research. Since I have taken like introduction psychology courses, I've been somewhat familiar with the video game addiction like field, so I kind of know how the brain works, but at a pretty superficial level. So if there's someone who's more deeper into the research, maybe they can comment down below, let me know like how it actually works, right? So in this video, we're just going to be discussing how cold turkey works with video games, because I know there's been like a new wave of approaches for like quitting gaming. I know Healthy Gamer GG, or I guess he's just known as Healthy Gamer now. He actually still plays video games, and that's perfectly fine, because we need to understand what video games do for you and why they're addictive, and that will help you understand if you should quit cold turkey or if you shouldn't quit cold turkey. So firstly, we know that video games, they activate some like a neurotransmitter in your brain called dopamine. And when people use the word dopamine, they usually use it very loosely. They don't really understand what it actually means. You don't get dopamine from video games. Dopamine causes your brain to release dopamine. And that's the like a subtle nuance that most people miss with dopamine, because dopamine is simply a neurotransmitter. Without dopamine, you'll literally die. So like, it's more so that like video games, they activate the neurotransmitter and they cause it to release in your like, I believe the correct term is like this. I'm not like my intro psych knowledge is not, but like something with like the synapses, right? And we have to realize that dopamine, the goal of dopamine, it's kind of acts like as the motivation chemical and also like the pleasure. So it's like pleasure and motivation kind of, but it's also different from other neurotransmitters such as like serotonin, which is more like long term. So if you've heard of like people having depression, they can take something called SSRIs, which they're basically like they inject like serotonin into you kind of, and that's why it actually helps, because serotonin and dopamine are very different from each other. Dopamine, the idea is that when you release dopamine, it makes you feel good in the moment, right? But it's not necessarily a long-term feeling, whereas serotonin is more long-term. So with video games, they give you a lot of dopamine, but they don't give you serotonin. So have you ever had like those gaming sessions when you play for a long time and you feel so good, right? But once the gaming session's over, you feel like complete garbage. And that's pretty much how every one of my Fortnite sessions went. I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, so that's the whole idea about like dopamine. And you want to keep that in mind, because when you're playing video games, we know that these video games, they're designed very creatively. And by that, I don't mean that in a positive way. I mean like they're designed to addict you. And that's just how economics works, right? Like all companies, their goal is to make a profit. And by causing users to play for longer, they can cause them to make more in-game purchases and therefore increase revenue and profit for their company. That's basically like supply and demand, right? The more in demand your video game is, the more people will spend money on it, and the more money the company will make. And then, you know, that's like so many benefits, right? In that sense. But once we understand that, we have to realize that although that's great for companies, this is not good for you. And you need to find a way to break out of this loop if you are addicted. So for me, when I played Fortnite, I know that I definitely played for a lot of hours. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I had over 4,500 hours on Fortnite alone. And that's only Fortnite. And that doesn't even include the time that I spent watching like Fortnite tournaments, talking Fortnite discords, you know, going on Twitter and looking at Fortnite, you know, Fortnite r/Fortnite competitive subreddit, all those kinds of things. And this probably added up to more than 10,000 hours, because I know I told myself that I could moderate my gaming usage. And moderation only works if you're not addicted. And that's the key takeaway here, because if you're not addicted to video games, nothing is really an issue. But if you are addicted, moderation is going to be very tricky to pull off unless if you actually unless if you actually know what you're doing, right? And that's the main thing that we need to look at. The point of video games is that why they're so addictive is because they fulfill biological needs. And that's what makes it very difficult to break free from a video game addiction. So from my experience and from what the research suggests, basically, video games fulfill a few like primal desires, right? Because if you can think about your brain, I think I discussed this in the last video with like the hindbrain, the forebrain, the midbrain, right? There's a part of your brain that's more of like the primal part, right? Like, back when we were cavemen, we look at stuff as like the primal desires. Like everything that you do has a relation to how you want to survive, right? So, for example, like a need for achievement and like social interaction, these things, they're all your brain makes decisions, like the primal part of it. There's obviously like the more developed part of it, which is more like your rational part, but like the rational part of your brain. But the other part of it, it's more focused on just getting survival. So video games, they kind of mimic that, and that's why they're so fun, and that's why they're so addictive. And we need to know that that's actually true before we take any steps forward. And when you look at that, you have to think about like, what do video games do for you? For me, they really had that like sense of achievement, right? Because everyone's goal in life is to be successful, or at least I hope it is. I mean, maybe I'm just a very ambitious person. I don't know about that, but for people to be successful, like you have to work hard and achieve your goals. But video games, they kind of provide an escape as well, and that's the other thing that they can do. And if you're someone who's successful, like everybody wants success, but video games, they do a pretty good job of emulating it, but in the worst way. So, for example, being successful in the real world, that could mean a variety of different things, right? And the ultimate goal is probably to achieve happiness, but video games can also provide a sense of happiness because since they cause your brain to release dopamine, obviously it's going to make you feel good. And that's not what you really want, right? You want your life to be in a place where video games won't affect you at all. So, for example, if you played a lot of video games, you would probably find that your life is kind of numb as well. Because I found this a lot, right? Because obviously, when you play video games, they're fun, right? But when I found that when I did other activities, they weren't really that fun. Like, I remember I was into like a few hobbies before I got like super addicted to gaming. I played the piano, I did taekwondo, and I did swimming, and also a few other things like cubing, right? Cubing was one of like my favorite hobbies at that time. But over time, it just became kind of like boring, right? Like honestly, I'm not gonna lie. When I tried to play piano, I played for like 5 minutes. I'm like, this just feels really like numb, and it's not super interesting. And even the same with cubing. I'm like, why would I just cube when I can just play Fortnite, right? And it's just these kinds of things that you need to keep in mind because video games, they're not objectively bad. Here's how the best way to see video games from my lens. Like in the past, I'd probably look at video games more negatively because as a former addict, like obviously you're not gonna like the thing that like basically ruined your life, right? So with video games, how I look at it now is more so just like video games aren't something that are objectively bad, but knowing that they do have a high potential of being addictive is something that you really want to keep in mind because I know when I played a lot of video games, my life felt numb. And honestly, if you're in a good point, like, okay, if you're the person that plays like once a month for 3 hours to hang out with friends, like that's totally fine. But you have to be really cognizant of when video games are actually affecting of your life, right? When they're causing issues. And it's pretty easy to be in denial of these kinds of things, right? So like to make the decision of whether you want to quit cold turkey, one of the biggest things that I recommend to people who are struggling with a video game addiction is something called the 90-day detox. And this is from Game Quitters. And I just think it's really powerful because the whole point of the 90-day detox, it's not really like it's not like the dopamine detox stuff you see online. It's mostly just it is kind of like that, right? But the idea is that when you quit gaming for just 90 days, like just cut it out entirely, and I would recommend not just cutting out the video game itself, but also leaving gaming communities. Like basically cut yourself out of the community. This can be very difficult if you have a lot of friends who game and stuff, but you should let them know that like you're really struggling with a gaming addiction. It's good to be open about these sorts of things, right? Because if you just leave them all of a sudden, they won't really understand. But when you're trying to do the 90-day detox, this is probably how I would decide if you want to do cold turkey or moderation, right? And what I would do here is that once you quit gaming, you basically want to, like, you have to take some time off for yourself. And the best thing to do, obviously, would be to replace it with other hobbies, right? And you kind of want to, like, find a few hobbies, but it's going to be pretty hard because I know when I started hobbies, you're not really good at them, and being bad at something always feels, like, bad in general. Like, if you're picking up a new skill or hobby, it's going to take time, and you kind of have to push through that. And during this time, you basically want to try other things, and you really don't want to be too involved with anything like to do with like social media, like scrolling Reddit, watching TV. Like these are like more consumptive hobbies. Hobbies. I want you to look more into like hobbies that involve something, some sort of creation. For example, like playing an instrument, going to the gym. I don't know. For example, like me, I'm making YouTube videos, like these kinds of things, right? You want to look at it is like technology based, right? Something even things like programming, like they're very good hobbies that you can work with, even if they're technology based. You just don't want them to be like consumption based. That's the one thing that I want you to keep in mind. And when you're looking at these hobbies, you probably pretty much just want to do them for 90 days, but also with the 90-day detox, the goal is that you want to create a better life for yourself. I know a lot of people talk about like, okay, yeah, video games are bad, but what about the people who watch TV all day, right? They're just like they're binging Netflix and they're complaining about how video games are bad. And that's not the point, because you're not trying to compare video games to other forms of entertainment that you want to avoid. You're trying to build a better life for yourself. And if video games are an obstacle that's preventing you from building that better life, then you need to know that you have to do something about it, right? And I'm not saying that you have to quit entirely. And I know there's people such as Healthy Gamer, they're still able to play video games and their life isn't affected. For me, I prefer not playing video games at all because I'm going to be honest, I have no self-control skills. And also, it's like, even if you do have self-control skills, these video games, they're pretty tough, man. Pretty tough to actually like just play them in moderation without them affecting. So I actually find it easier just to not play them at all. And your mileage may vary, right? But I would recommend just going through the 90-day detox, getting through everything that you can. Just it's going to be a very difficult time. I know I went through a lot of withdrawal symptoms, a lot of issues, right? Withdrawal symptoms. I know, like, even to this day, I still get nightmares about like video games, which is kind of traumatic to be honest. But just keeping that in mind, and then when you're going through the 90-day detox, I would actually recommend just like journaling your thoughts down. Like right now, I'm actually in the process of building like a 90-day detox tool in Java, and I'm trying to just learn programming this way and kind of improve my programming skills. But that tool won't be released anytime soon. But I just recommend like use a tool like Notion, and then just basically, yeah, every single day journal your thoughts down, right? Like get down all the ideas that you have for the day. What's your experience like, and just like kind of going through everything and like just writing down your thoughts. I find that journaling can be a pretty powerful tool. Just it's not so much like about like solving problems, but it's just more of like recognizing the feelings that you have and what's happening during this time. And I think that's really important just to like throughout the process, right? And I also want to emphasize the importance of like having a diverse range of hobbies when you're going through the 90-day detox, because you got to remember gaming fulfills multiple needs, such as a need to achieve, a need for socializing, a sense of escape, right? And there's really not one hobby that's as comprehensive as gaming and that it can accomplish all of it. So you need to find like maybe 3 or 4 solid hobbies that kind of tick off all the boxes. So let me give you an example of what I'm doing, right? So for a need to achieve, I honestly do programming because it's pretty similar. It gives me like similar feeling to gaming, but without like it's not really super addictive. And then for like social life, honestly, like hanging out with friends, that's what pretty much works the best for me. Joining clubs, being active. For me, I'm in university, right? So being active in university clubs, talking to people in class. It's not really a hobby per se, but but there's also definitely other activities that you can be social with. I know last year I played on a baseball team. It was just like a local house league. It wasn't anything serious, but that was a great opportunity to socialize, right? And if you want like a sense of escapism, like there's better ways to do it than video games, in my opinion. For example, things like reading. I know like reading novels, or for me, honestly, there's some stuff that I do, like cubing, for example, just trying to get your mind off stuff. And then like a sense of accomplishment as well, like other than, you can also use like going to the gym, for example. Going to the gym is honestly one of the best hobbies, I'd say, because physical exercise, like, let's be honest, everybody needs physical exercise. It's like basically crucial to like survival. Like, it's good to maintain like good health, obviously. And just having like a combination of these hobbies, like for me personally, like I've actually picked up maybe like 6 or 7 hobbies at this point. Like for me right now that I can think of, I have cubing, making YouTube videos, playing baseball, programming, singing, playing the piano, and there's probably 1 or 2 other things I'm missing that I can't recall. And also maybe, yeah, like I think those are the main ones for me. But like just like these kinds of hobbies, they'll be really beneficial for you. And that's what's so great about the 9-day detox. So I really want you to give it a try if you're struggling with video game addiction. And after that, you can decide if you want to play video games. And that's all for today's video. Consider liking, subscribing, and commenting down below. And I hope you have a great day and good luck with your video game quitting journey.